Okay, we're moving on in Genesis. We're looking at Genesis 37 today. Last time we finished up Esau's genealogy, a little bit tedious, but we got through it, and we're moving on to Genesis 37. And this is sort of the grand finale of Genesis, the story of Joseph, which brings so many of the themes together. And one of the themes that I want to stress for us is there's a pattern with God where he begins by revealing his will. He speaks to us. He speaks to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, especially we saw last time. And then he accomplishes his will in surprising ways. In particular, he accomplishes the will through scandals, through deceptions, through the evil and the wicked scheming of men. He moves the pieces around and accomplishes his goodwill. And so that phrase that concludes the book of Genesis, if you remember what Joseph tells his brothers, remember when they were afraid that he's going to get revenge upon them, and he tells them something about God's sovereignty. Remember what he says?
You meant it for evil. God meant it for good.
Yeah, you meant these things for evil, but God meant them for good. And that is a theme that we saw through Jacob, where God declares his will that the older will serve the younger, that Jacob will be the one, but then that is accomplished by means of deception, where people are deceived and to do what God intends for them to do. It was God intends that Jacob would go off to Haran, that he would begin this family, and it would be through Leah, but it's through deception that he ends up with Leah instead of Rachel at first. And throughout, we see this play, and this theme really comes home big time in the final story of Joseph. So let's begin that. Genesis 37. Jacob has returned to the land with his whole family. Everything's settled. They're living happily ever after now, and let's see the next drama that begins. So, but would you start us off verses 1 to 4, Genesis 37?
Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him.
Okay. All right. So it starts. Jacob is in the land of Canaan. That's where all these things have been happening. That's the land that God promised to Abraham, where Abraham dwelt as a sojourner, and same thing with Isaac, and now Jacob is there. We've heard that phrase, the next section, that these are the generations of someone. Let me see if I have a list of that, because I think we had, which I looked it up for earlier.
Didn't we just have that with these are the generations of Esau?
Yes, yes. It's a division in the book of Genesis where that phrase is used. These are the generations. It was used of at the very beginning when God. These are the generations of the heaven and earth. These are the generations of, I think, of Adam, and then it gets to of Noah and of Terah, and now we have this next section. So it really begins. These are the generations. Is a sort of a mark of a new section begins. So this is a new chapter in the story of the patriarchs here. And the story, it's the generation of Jacob. He is the patriarch. He's the one who is the father who's alive. That's why it says, for example, these are the generations of Terah instead of Abraham at the beginning, because Terah's still alive when Abraham is called. So it's the father who gets the kind of sets the pace of it, even though we're not told anything about Terah. So Jacob is the head of the family. This is the next section, beginning with him. And what are we told here? We're told some things about Joseph. What do we have here?
Well, he
He's
was
17.
17, so he was considered they call him a boy, but he was 17.
Yes. So he's 17 years old. Okay.
He's a shepherd.
He is a shepherd.
He's a fink.
Well, okay, passing the flock.
Came back and told on his brothers.
Now he's with, he brings a bad report with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. Okay, okay. About who are the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah?
Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher.
Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Okay. All right. And he brings a bad report to their father, to their father. All right. So yeah, okay. They obviously don't particularly care for that. So even just at the beginning of this, what's your take on Joseph? What kind of how do we think of him?
Kind of a Dudley Do-Right.
He's a totally different.
With what we've covered so
Not
far, he's,
necessarily a negative thing.
No,
Yeah.
No, not necessarily. I mean, if here's the thing, if they are, if they're cheating or stealing from their father, or if they're doing things that are, yeah, you could say he's a fink if they're just doing boyish stuff or whatever, and he's just wants to get him in trouble, but he brings a bad report, and given that these guys will be soon plotting to kill him, we suspect that the bad report might be pretty significant. It may not be it might be something troublesome, if you will. But either way, we're not told what the report is, just that it's a bad report. And what else are we told about Joseph here?
that Israel loved him more than the others.
Yes. Israel. Who is Israel?
Jacob.
Jacob.
Is there any significance to the fact that I mean, probably we don't know that, but why in one place he's called Jacob and then the next sentence he's called Israel in the same story?
That's a great question. I think as we go through it here, do we see in this story, in this chapter, if we look down, does he revert back to Jacob again later on, or does he continue calling? No, Jacob
Is Jacob?
is at the end again. So yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. Does anyone have a note on maybe their study Bible might say something about that? Or why he is called suddenly switches over to Israel. Sometimes he's called Jacob, sometimes called Israel. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. What's the difference between the names?
Jacob is trickster,
Jacob
and Israel is
uh,
father of God's nations.
no.
Yeah.
Israel means he who struggles with God. You
Yes.
wrestle with God. It's a new name he's been given. So let's try it this way. Israel, we know this for a fact that Israel is the covenant name
Mm.
of Jacob.
Didn't God give him that name after they wrestled all night?
Yes. Yes, that's his covenant name. So it reminds you of that at the very beginning, that it switches to Jacob. Jacob is his natural name is, so clearly he doesn't he keeps the name Jacob, but Israel is his covenant name and reminds you of that covenant even as we begin the story. So it might just be to set the tone for us that this is all part of the covenant promises of God. But that's a good question. There might be some other reasons for why they switch names like that. Like in the gospel in the book of Acts, like Paul, his real name is Saul. Paul, but if you follow the reading of it, Saul is his Hebrew name and Paul is his Greek name, and so when he's on the mission field, he is pretty much Paul, because he's dealing with Gentiles with Greeks. But at the beginning, when he is a Pharisee and he is dealing with the Hebrews, he is Saul. He's known that way. So I guess to emphasize different things. So, but we do know that he loved him more than the others. Why did he love him more than the others?
Because he was the son of his old age. Sorry, Liz.
Yeah, because he
Okay.
was the son of his old age. What does that mean?
He waited for him.
He did. Yeah, he waited a long
Rachel's
time.
son.
Yeah, he's Rachel's son. That's really interesting. It's funny because I have a good friend who has 3 kids. Two of them he had early on in his marriage, and then the third one was a surprise that came much later. I mean, we're talking like 15 years after the first 2 came. So the first 2 are grown up. They're practically out of the house when this third one comes along. There is no question, he won't say it, but there's no question when you go over there, who is his favorite? Who is and it's the daughter of his old age. You would say that was his favorite. That seems to be his favorite. He just takes such a joy in her. So yeah, there's something about the funny thing is that, Benjamin, what about poor Benjamin? I thought he's the son of his old age too. And but he doesn't seem to have the same affection. At this point, we don't know exactly how old Benjamin is. He certainly hasn't come of age yet. Yeah.
Do we know who Benjamin's mother is?
Oh yeah, Rachel.
Rachel.
She died. She died in giving birth to him.
Hmm.
So he is, but it's not, this focus is not so much on that Rachel was the mother of him, but that he was old when he came along. And I think there's something about that. It's like a second chance
Mhm.
when with that
I
you
can
can,
tell you as a grandmother,
yeah.
you mellow when you get older. Things that were so important when you're younger, raising your own kids, aren't really that important. And you become more soft and more understanding. And my grandkids get away with murder.
Yes, huh? Is that the case?
That's
So
a job description of a grandparent.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that it's really interesting here. So, but he's the son of his old age. He just loves this, and I think we're not told exactly what it was, but yeah, maybe he's feeling like you think about all the children that they had between the other ones, and just the battle, the bitterness, all the contesting, and by the time Joseph comes along, it seems to be kind of all settled. Rachel finally has a child, and there's something peaceful about this child that brings him great joy. But whatever it is, but then it says he gives him something here.
Coat of many colors.
Yeah, he makes him a robe of many colors. Does anyone have a study Bible with some notes on that? Of
Yeah.
what's the big deal about a robe of many colors?
There's a sign, a sign of, go ahead, Jack.
I've got something here that says the Septuagint
The
favor this, what is it?
Septuagint. It's the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Yeah.
The Septuagint favored the translation of the Hebrew phrase used by Moses, although some prefer a long-sleeved robe or an ornamented tunic. It marked the owner as the one whom the father intended to be the future leader of the household, an honor normally given to the firstborn son.
Is that what you got, Rob?
Says the exact nature of the code is uncertain. The rendering of many colors reflects the Septuagint translation. Some suggest that the Hebrew means a long coat with sleeves.
Yeah, mine says a long sleeve robe is a mark of special honor.
Okay. So an honor usually for the firstborn. And that's the thing. Joseph is interesting. He is treated as sort of the firstborn son. If you remember in the inheritance, what does the firstborn son get?
Double.
a double portion, right?
Yeah.
So the way that works out is if you have two sons, the oldest gets 2/3, the youngest gets 1/3. If you've got four sons, the oldest gets 2/5, everyone else gets 1/5, and so forth. And so when we're going to see that when the tribes, regarding the promise, we see that Joseph gets a double portion. There is no tribe of Joseph, is there?
Ephraim and Manasseh.
Ephraim and Manasseh. He gets two tribes, his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So we see right there, Joseph will get a double portion in the end. So right immediately we see that Israel is treating him as if he were the firstborn, giving him that great honor. And so then what happens because of that?
Well, he was the
Hated him.
firstborn of Rachel. And
Yeah.
that was his favorite, so that I bet that has a lot to do with it.
Probably has something to do with it too. Yeah, he's the firstborn of Rachel, his beloved, and she has to wait so long before she can have him.
Hmm.
What's the final thing said about Joseph in this passage here?
Brothers
His
hated him.
brothers hated him.
They couldn't
brother-
speak peacefully to him.
Yeah, his brothers hated him and told him, basically. So we're already setting up here that some things about Joseph. Let's sum it up here. He is a shepherd. He is presented as righteous, unlike his brothers. He is loved by the father, hated by his brothers. So, does that sound familiar to anyone here? As we're looking forward to the story, we can already tell this is a pattern that we're going to see again and again of a righteous one, loved by a father, loved by the father.
Isaac and Ishmael.
Jesus,
Yeah.
the father and the son.
Yeah, hated by his brothers. And so you're going to see that with Abraham and Isaac, absolutely. Isaac is loved, and Ishmael is not hated so much, but Isaac is favored, and there's a tension between those two. Same thing with Jacob and Esau. Then we see here this ultimately with Joseph, and ultimately, of course, it fulfilled in Christ, in Jesus. The one loved by the Father, but hated by his brothers. So that's where we're going to begin. So
Isn't it interesting how both Joseph and David, who are considered types of Christ, they're both shepherds.
Mhm.
yeah, add to that Moses.
Moses, yeah.
Yeah, he becomes a shepherd. It's really, yeah, all of them. Shepherd's a big theme. It's really interesting. And that's surprising because it was never an esteemed profession. No one ever admired shepherds. They still don't. And yet shepherd is a very big theme. It's such a tedious, boring task. It requires such perseverance and devotion. There's no adventure to it. It's just caring for sheep, and that's the profession that God seems to choose above all.
It's lonely too. You don't have many people helping you, so you're
Yeah.
by yourself with the
Yeah.
Lord.
And has any of you ever met a shepherd? No, I don't. I can't. I don't know if I have or not. But that's the whole thing. It's like you don't meet them because they're always out in the sheep in the field. They're
Mhm.
not part of the hustle and bustle of society. They're not the movers and shakers in the world. It's
I have
really
a book called A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23. And it's written from a shepherd's point of view and what the different things and how it applies to caring for sheep. It's very excellent book. Just opened my
great.
eyes to a lot of things that you don't see in the Psalm
me.
because you don't know shepherds.
That's an old book. That's been around for a while, hasn't it? I
Yeah.
read that book years ago.
And each verse in the Psalm represents one of God's names.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I studied it a long time ago, but I just thought that was really cool.
That's neat.
So this is just a wild speculation, just because I like to think in those terms sometimes. So I'm wondering if Joseph was the favorite over Benjamin, because for a couple reasons, probably because Joseph was Rachel's first son, her first son, and that was probably a big deal. But the other thing was that she died giving birth to Benjamin.
Mm.
So the birth of Benjamin is what took Rachel away from Jacob.
Yeah, it could be that, but also if Joseph is 17, Benjamin is probably very, very young at that point too. And he's just probably not of age to be a pleasure to his father just yet. It could be that he's just way too young to, because you do see that later on, if you remember, where Jacob is very protective of Benjamin, if you remember at the end,
Yes.
Corey.
Yeah.
So at this stage of the game, and at that point, Joseph would have been about 31. So Benjamin would have been an adult at that point, a young man. But at this point, Benjamin could be really young because he has Joseph, and then how many more years are they there before they leave? It's hard to know. So Benjamin could be just way too young. So he's not someone I know. For me, like, I didn't start enjoying Daniel, really enjoying him, until he was about 5, 6, when he was active enough to do stuff with his dad. Until then, he's predominantly with his mom. So it could be that too. I'm not sure. He definitely loves Benjamin very much, but I think Joseph is of age now. He's a young man, and he can show him all that affection, all that love that he wants to. So
How
let's
long
pick
are people living in these days now?
how what?
How long are people living in these days?
Well, Jacob's going to live a long time. But I don't know the average lifespan of people. They're exceptions. They're not. Jake, the long life of these guys is not the rule. It's almost to highlight God's special favor on them that they live that long. Jacob, I think, will live to be like 180 or something like that. He's got a good number of years in him. I don't remember exactly how long, but he's right now. He's got to be. If he's Joseph 17, the land. Let's see, he was about 77 when he left the land. He's gone for 20 years. He's probably over 100 years old now,
Wow.
I guess. Yeah. Yeah. He's been around. So let's pick it up there. Rob, you want to get the next paragraph for us? 5 to 8.
Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brother said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you ever seen the movie, the show, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, that famous musical.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. It's really interesting because the movie, I remember somebody telling me they saw the show and they're like, "Oh, it's incredible. It's exactly the story of the Bible." But when I watched it, I'm like, it gets the actions, the scenes down, but it totally misses the point of it. Because in the movie, Joseph's dream is sort of his own dream of what, you can dream your dreams. And just like we tell people, you got to have a dream, and it's sort of the dream for your life. And he has a dream for his life. And there's a song even there, "Any Dream Will Do," because just, you just need to have a dream and go pursue your dream. And as if Joseph's dream was to rule over Egypt. And by golly, he did it, I mean, how did that happen? No, Joseph had a dream. What do we know about dreams in the book of Genesis?
That's how God communicates with people.
Yes. In Genesis, And I stress that in the book of Genesis in the Old Testament, God speaks, let me put it this way, in the Old Testament, God speaks to his prophets through dreams and visions. That's how he does it. Remember that. That's why I said Moses is different. If you remember when I think it was Aaron and his Miriam were confronting Moses, who does he think he is? And God defends him and says, you know, to prophets I speak in dreams and visions, but Moses I speak face to face. But there's a unique one here. And Joseph having a dream is just immediately thinking, okay, this is how God speaks to his prophet. He gives his word. So we are to read this. This is the word of the Lord given to Israel through Joseph. And he's known throughout this as sort of this interpreter of dreams, just like Daniel would be later on. He speaks through dreams. That's going to be very important to interpret this. This is not Joseph simply driving his brothers crazy, a little brother annoying them with this. I have this dream. Someday I'm going to rule over you, and you're going to bow down to me. Ha ha ha! And they hate him for this. It's like he is given a word from the Lord in this dream, and he presents it to them because they're in the dream. This word pertains to them. They, of course, don't receive it very well. So, what is the word of the Lord that is revealed in this passage to them?
That they
Joseph
shall,
is going to reign.
Say that again, Jack. I'm sorry.
I was saying that they shall bow down, the brothers shall bow down to Joseph.
Yeah. Okay. The brothers will one day bow down before Joseph in the dream, but basically that he will, and they interpret. That's how they interpret it. Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us? Joseph will rule over his brothers. Like that was the word, if you remember, given to Rebekah. You know, the older will serve the younger. Jacob will rule over Esau. That's the word of the Lord given to her that she takes, that she believes and embraces, that Isaac doesn't at first. He later on comes around. So that's the word of the Lord given to them. Joseph will rule over his brothers. Notice the response of the brothers.
Anger.
He
They hate
hated them even more.
even more. And this one for his dreams and words. They hate his word, the word of God given to them. So we can see immediately these brothers. You're going to notice in the next dream that you'll see a better response to this dream here. But let's take a look at the next dream given to us here. Jack, you want to get that for us? 9 to 11.
Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind.
Okay. The second dream. Again, this is the word of the Lord. Is what is the dream actually? What is the dream?
Sun, the moon, the stars will bow before him.
Yeah. Now, again, he doesn't interpret the dreams for them necessarily. He says the dream is that the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me.
And of course, there's 11 brothers exclusive of him.
Yeah, yeah. So the father now, his father Jacob interprets it this way. How does he interpret that dream?
Your mother, your father, and your brothers are they going to bow? We're all going to bow to you.
Yeah. And your mother. It's interesting. I thought his mother's dead at this point now.
She must not have had Benjamin yet.
I think she had Benjamin already. That's interesting. Your father, your mother. Huh, I'm curious about that. You mentioned her mother. That's really interesting.
Hmm.
Anyone have a note on that about his?
Yeah, it says probably mother, probably a reference to Joseph's stepmother, Leah. His mother, Rachel, was already dead at this point.
Oh, okay. That Joseph will rule over the entire household, including his mom and dad. That's pretty bold. Again, Joseph, he is not even interpreting the dreams. The brothers and the father interpret the meaning of the dreams. Joseph just tells the dream. This is what was revealed to me. I had this dream. This is what happened. He makes no boasts. He doesn't aspire to. He doesn't grasp at it. He just simply declares what has been revealed. That I've had another dream. The moon, the sun, the 11 stars are bowing down to me. I don't know what that means necessarily. And the father says, does that mean that we're going to bow down to you? That you're going to rule over? He doesn't say, yeah, that's what it means. Or that bow down to me now. He doesn't grasp at it. He just presents it to them. But notice the response to the second dream.
They were jealous of him.
There's a twofold response to this. His brothers
Even more angry.
were jealous of him. Yeah.
His father rebuked him.
His father rebuked him. Yeah. But what else? This is the very end. Verse 11, see that?
But he kept the saying
Others
in
would be jealous of them.
But he kept the saying in mind.
Mm.
So the father, you can see the father is open to this. It doesn't make sense to him. It seems pretty obnoxious that your son, that would be the case. How can it be possible that the father would bow down to his son? How can that even be possible? He can't fathom it. How will that be? That the youngest, that all the older brothers will bow down to the youngest son. That's an impossibility. And that the father himself and the mother would bow down to the son. That's crazy. So he rebukes him at first, but even so, he kept the saying in mind. There's an openness in Jacob. He's a man of faith. And so he's open to what this might possibly, he can't fathom what this would look like. It's a pretty scandalous dream and word, but it's the word. And I think Jacob understands that, unlike his brothers. And you notice the response of the brothers is not one of, oh, you're just crazy, and dismiss it. They don't dismiss it. I think they too know this is the word of God, and they are resisting it. They are rejecting it. They're full of jealousy and hatred is what motivating them. If they just otherwise, if I ever told my older brother and siblings that, hey, I had a dream that, you were bowing down to me, they wouldn't be jealous of me. They would just mock me mercilessly and and make fun of me and just call me crazy and ignore it. It wouldn't trouble them one bit. They
tell you
know.
to dream on.
What's that?
They would tell you to dream on.
Yeah, dream on. I mean, this is, just so stupid. They would, it would not be something that would drive them to murder me and to jealousy. They know this is something more than just a fancy of a young man, his aspirations. God is speaking, and they know their history too, of how God has revealed to them. And so this dream comes, and it comes twice. And later on, if you remember, the significance of a dream repeating itself, Joseph will explain that to Pharaoh.
Emphasis, isn't it?
Yeah, that this is the double the double dream implies the certainty of what is to come. It has been declared. It is an unconditional. It's not a something that could change. If you do some things differently, it'll turn out differently. That's what Joseph tells Pharaoh. He has that double dream. If you remember the cows, and then the what was the other one? The corn. What was it?
Yeah, go on.
And so he says this is certain to happen. He says that you heard it twice means it is certain to happen. It's not gonna. You need to prepare for that. This is told twice. This is certain to happen, and so they need to start thinking about this, about what this could mean. Of course, they're inflamed with jealousy over him, and they hate him just all the more because of the word. All right, 12 to 17. We'll pick up the next story here. Teresa, you want to get that for us?
Sure. Now his brothers went to pasture. Now their brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, Are your brothers pasturing? Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said, Here I am. To him. So he said to him, Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me the word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, What are you seeking? I am seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock. And the man said, They have gone away. For I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan.
Okay. So the father, what does Jacob do here at the beginning? So Israel again, reminding the covenant here. Israel sends Joseph to do what?
Check on his brothers.
Yeah. Check on your brothers. Check on his brother. And where's his brothers right now?
Shepherding.
Yeah, where are they right now, though?
Dothan.
Shechem.
The pasturing near Shechem when he sends them. So he sends them to Shechem. And what is it? What do you notice about Joseph in this story so far?
He's obedient.
He's obedient. Joseph is obedient. Here I am. That's a great phrase. Here I am. Joseph is obedient to his father, unlike his brothers. Go see if it's well with them and send me word. So he goes from Hebron to Shechem. We're going to see how far that is in a second. And then a man finds him wandering in the fields. And what does he tell him?
They went to Dothan.
But the brothers moved on to Dothan, right? To Dothan. Or to Dothan or Dothan. And so Joseph goes Dothan. Let's just see what that looks like on a map here. I have it below. So we start here, is in Hebron. Sends them all the way up to Shechem. That's a long way.
Mm.
That's a good hike. All the way up to Shechem here. And then when he gets there, they're not there. And so he heads over to Dothan and finds them there. Yeah, so that's no small task for Joseph to go try to find them, but you can see first off how far they are away from their father. They are really way out there. So pretty much Joseph is completely at their mercy when he gets there. They are so far away, and they could pretty much do whatever they please, and the father will never find out. And there's no one. Part of, I think, why it's significant that they moved on to Dothan is if this was in Shechem, that's where they told their father he would be. They probably have other people in that area who would have been aware of what's happening, would have seen some things. If they move on to Dothan, takes them further away and off the grid. So they really are in secret and can do what they please with Joseph when he arrives, as we'll see. Gets there.
I was curious, so I looked up how far it is from Shechem to, no, Hebron to Shechem, and it's 50 miles, and then another 15 to Dothan.
50 mile.
Big hike.
Yeah.
They were far from Daddy.
Pushing sheep along.
Yeah. On the 15 miles. Yeah. Now, why they went up there? Maybe they just need to find better pasture or whatever it is.
Get away from Daddy's spies.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really, but they're out there. They're out there. But you see the obedience of Joseph. You can see him going the extra mile to find them, to seek them out, to bring a report back to them. All right. Let's see what happens. 18 to 24. Liz, you want to get that for us?
Sure. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore. And they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it.
Okay. So the brothers conspire. And what's their plan?
They want to kill him.
Yes. Yes. The plan is kill him, and then what?
Blame it on wild animals.
Yeah, we're gonna kill him, and then we're gonna throw him into a pit. And then what? And then blame it on. And then they can take the coat and blame it on a wild animal. And that should take care of him and his dreams. But now we have something strange happening here with Reuben. First off, who is Reuben?
The oldest.
He is the firstborn, right? And what do you know about Reuben so far?
Was disqualified.
Yeah. Who remember who had slept with concubine. So if you think about this, what's Reuben's plan? What does he want to do?
He wants to save him from his brothers and restore him to his father.
He wants to rescue him and restore him to Jacob. Why does he want to? Why do you think he wants to do that?
Maybe to gain favor with Jacob, but again, I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's probably an attempt to perhaps get back into the good graces of his father. He may have some great regrets over what he did, and probably has realized he's on the outs, and this is one way he can maybe get back into the good graces of his father by saving him. But he wants to save him. So what is his plan? What does he say? What does he tell the brothers?
Hands off.
Yeah, okay. Don't take his life. But rather do what?
Put him in a pit.
Yeah, throw him in a pit for now. And then we'll kind of like the whole purpose of that is to kind of stalling, hoping to rescue him later.
What are all these pits?
That's a good question. So I'm sure that there are these caves and things like that. I'm not sure. Do we have these? Could be. The pit was empty. There was no water in it, so there were these cisterns, I guess. So they would have had probably an empty well, probably a dry well
Yeah.
might have been dug. Is what I'm going to guess. It mentions there's no water in it, so it could be just these were dry wells, perhaps. I don't know. Do we have a note on there somewhere about what these pits would be? They were seem to be quite a few of these pits. There's a note. There's a footnote on mine on the word pits in verse 20. Not sure what it is though. So look. Anybody have a note on that?
I've got Genesis 37:22 and Proverbs 1:11.
Okay. What is that?
37:22.
So Genesis 37:22, shed no blood, throw him into this pit. Okay. Let's see if we got the notes. There's a footnote on the word pits, if you can. Doesn't really say, does it? Dude. Oh well. All right. Another good question for us to consider. Pit, there we go. What does the footnote say? Oh, the footnote is cistern.
That's
Throw them into one of the cisterns, which would have been a dry well.
Exactly what you said. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. And yeah, they would have had probably, if they're going to be out there watering flocks, they need to have wells, they need to have water available for them. So, yeah. All right. So when Joseph, wasn't Jeremiah thrown into a cistern also? I can't remember. Was he?
Yep, yes, he was.
Yeah, that seems to be a common practice with these guys here.
Micaiah.
Who?
I'm gonna say it wrong. Micaiah. He was a
Oh.
prophet that Hezekiah asked to hear what he thought about going up to kill the Syrians. I think it was Ahaz. I'm confusing all my stories. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
yeah. All right, pick it up here. Verse. So what do? They strip him of his robes, throw him into a pit. So he's stripped of his robe, and thrown into the pit. All right, we'll pick it up there. Bob, Fowler, you want to get the next part for us? 5 to 28.
And they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, myrrh, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and let not our hand be upon him. For he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. The Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt.
We come back up here. Reuben, I think he gives them those instructions, and then the assumption is he kind of leaves them, and he's hoping to come back because he's not aware of this plan, as we're going to find out.
Yeah.
Brothers what do they do? So after they throw him in the pit, says what do they do? Verse 25.
He saw an opportunity to make a couple of bucks.
Yeah, they see first of all, they sit down to eat, for one thing. Have lunchtime, let's have a meal together, which is really, when you think about it, it's cold. I mean, they're brothers in the pit right now, and they're just sitting down to eat as if all is well, as if all is at peace here.
The human heart is wickedly evil.
Sure is, huh?
Mm-hmm.
As if all is well. And
It strikes me funny that they convince themselves that it's okay to sell him into slavery because they're not taking any blood from him. You know, oh, he's our brother. Let's not hurt him. Let's just sell him as a slave.
yeah. So they see
They
They
don't want to have blood on their hands.
a caravan of Ishmaelites on their way to Egypt. Okay. Whose plan is this now?
Judas.
All right, so Judah's plan. Now, Judah, you can see arising in the story here. The next chapter is going to be huge for Judah, and his character will take a very different arc here. But even here, he's introduced to us in his relationship to his brothers. And it's Judah's plan that prevails over his brother. They listen to him. And what is the plan?
Sell him.
Okay, don't kill him, sell him. Okay. What profit is if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? No profit. Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. And he does say something interesting. Why he wants to sell him as opposed to kill him?
Well, he is our brother. He's our own flesh.
Yeah, he is our own flesh, right? So let's just make a few bucks off of him and not kill him, right? He is our own flesh. So then what happens? Now they refer to the Midianite traders. I guess that's interesting. So these are Ishmaelites, but they're also Midianites. Who else do you know as a Midianite? You remember? Later on.
Moses' father-in-law.
Yes. That's like Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, is a Midianite. They take him out. They buy him for how much?
20 shekels of silver.
There's a note on that somewhere, how much that is?
Yes.
Yeah.
A shekel was about 2/5 of an ounce or 11 grams of silver.
Okay, 11 grams of silver. Is that price significant at all? Do we know?
I know it's less than what Christ was.
Yeah, they sold Christ for 30.
Yeah, it's pretty low price, huh? Reveal that the price of slaves ranged from 15 to 30 shekels. That's what I have a note here. According to the Mesopotamian documents, the price of a slave was between 15 and 30 shekels. Okay.
That's
Yeah,
$10 in today's money.
Is that all?
Yeah, well, 2/5 of an ounce is about $7 a fifth. So yeah.
Not a lot.
Started in Leviticus 27.
What's it say there?
Value of a person. It says, if they're it specifically gives it by how their age and their gender. And it says if the person is from 5 years up to 20 years old, the valuation shall be for a male 20 shekels and for a female 10 shekels.
Oh,
And that's the Lord talking to Moses.
What, that's Leviticus what, Claudette?
It starts with Leviticus 1, chapter 27:1, and verse 5 is where it talks about the 20 shekels for someone that's up to the age of 20.
So what chapter? Leviticus 27
Yes, correct.
verses 1 to 5.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So they sell him as a slave. And now we'll finish up the story here with Reuben returns here.
But you know what's interesting? Can I just say that this happened before Moses? This
Yeah.
story with Joseph
Yep.
happened before Moses, before the Lord gave that proclamation or that
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So it would have been like an established tradition before that that would have been codified by Moses in the law there. All right, well, let's finish up the chapter here. Did everyone read already? We can start back up again. Claudette, would you finish this out here? 29 to 36.
When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard.
So Reuben's away when this all happened. When this happened. So he may have been out tending to the sheep or doing something, you know, I think that's probably how he framed it with them, is like, don't do anything to him now. Just put him in the pit right now. And he goes off to run an errand. And then his hope was to come back when they're all kind of sleeping or whatever, or just in the business, sneak him out, bring him back to his dad. He comes back and the pit is empty. And what's Reuben's response when he
What am I
sees?
gonna do now? You know, what?
Yeah, when Joseph is gone.
And where shall I go?
Yeah, it's interesting. He is his concern is clearly about his own welfare in this. He
Well, he
tears his
felt,
clothes. Yeah.
he feels responsible because he's the elder and is basically, you know, the buck stops with him.
Yeah, he realizes that he will be held responsible for this. For the death of what he thinks is the death of his brother. So they come up with a plan. They institute their plan. They slaughter a goat. They dip its blood. Okay, they take Joseph's robe, dip it in blood. And what do?
They take it back to his father and tell him that a wild animal must have got him. Could he identify the robe?
Yeah, now interesting. They it says they sent it back to him.
Hmm.
So they took the robe, but they sent the robe to their father. So I don't know if they sent that out ahead of them. It does have him at the end, his response. So they send it to him, not even facing him, I don't think, huh? They kind of send it with him with a note or with a messenger. Is this can you identify this robe? Is this your son's robe? uh, Jacob concludes. Jacob's conclusion. What?
It is my son's tunic.
It is, yeah. And Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Joseph has been devoured by a wild animal, and that was common. That was not an uncommon thing. You're out there, and the wild animals. You know, when they had during the Civil War in Mozambique, the people that were in Jabula, that were going to see them, were fleeing for their lives from the rebels in Mozambique. This was in the 80s and 90s, and they fled into South Africa. And many of them, they went into like the Kruger National Park areas, those areas where all the wild animals, and a number of them were killed by wild animals. Lions and yeah, absolutely, and leopards and the lions especially, they'll eat anything. They will attack anyone who comes by. They are not afraid of any human being, and especially at that time when they didn't have guns, you're very vulnerable to them. So that Joseph on his way to seek out his brothers is going through dangerous territories. He's going through parts where there are wild animals out there, and Jacob's conclusion is that he's been devoured by one of them.
You can tell this was a long time ago because no parent today would send their 17-year-old child on a walk to go find their brother and come back with a report. I would have thought he would have sent a servant with them at least to keep him company, or it just
Yeah, I don't know. It's possible that he went. Well, he wouldn't have. He was going alone, right? Because there was no mention of any resistance, any other.
right.
Certainly, and if he had gone with a servant, they would have had to kill the servant too, so that he couldn't reveal a conspiracy. So yeah, he would have gone by himself, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Is
Uh,
there
Get attacked by an animal by yourself.
Yeah.
Sounds like a realistic story.
Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
Is there any significance to the slaughtering of a goat, as far as a sacrifice at all?
Yeah, that could be. I mean, the whole blood and the sacrificing the animal. I mean, you see a scene where his brother is almost like a double substitution. They're sacrificing their brother in one sense, and then an animal in another sense is being sacrificed for his brother. So Joseph is actually saved by the blood of a goat, so that a goat takes his place. It's kind of an interesting substitution going on here.
Interesting.
Layers to the story that are fascinating. But Jacob's conclusion is that an animal has devoured his son. He's dead. He tears his clothes. And mourns for many days. So this is again, they send it ahead of him. Now, days, maybe weeks later, they return to him, but he is still in mourning. You know the typical mourning for someone in Jewish tradition, how long they mourn. But it's supposed to be, I believe, it's like 7 days. About 7 days of mourning. But Jacob's mourning,
Endless.
yeah, is endless now. It will be till he dies.
Mm.
He will go down to Sheol, to the dead, mourning for his son. And what else do we have? His sons and then his daughters rise up to comfort him. So they've all returned now to him, and he's still mourning his son, and he refused to be comforted. So, by his sons and daughters. So that's the story. So you send from Jacob's perspective, his son is dead.
So is Sheol here hell, or is it just to go down to death?
to death. Yeah. Sheol, Sheol is the place of the dead, like Hades. It's a symbolic name. It's just referring to going to the grave, going to the dead, whatever that place is.
Yeah,
Um,
Sheol is Hebrew and Hades is Greek.
Week.
Same
Yeah,
place.
and in the New Testament we have the word Gehenna, which is the lake of fire, which is the place of punishment. So that's where we get really, as I mentioned before, I think the term hell is used. We use it exclusively for eternal punishment, but in throughout history, that word has taken on a number of meanings. So it can also refer to Hades or the place of the dead, or it can refer to eternal punishment, and you have to kind of figure out the distinction between the two. All right, thus his father wept for him, and meanwhile, as we're meanwhile what?
He gets sold
Midianite
to
seller to Potiphar.
Joseph is sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh in Egypt. Okay.
This is the most amazing story of God taking evil and turning it into something great.
Yeah. It really is. This is dark, the sadness of it. I mean, there's such a picture of, again, God's sovereign plan that he accomplishes his sovereign goodwill through the darkest and the greatest of evil. Look at just go through the story already. The word of the Lord is spoken. Joseph will rule over his brothers. He's destined for glory. And yet the story is one of treachery and darkness and sadness and unconsolable grief of a father. Look at what this is. I marvel at the story again because God says, Jacob, I have loved. And look at the love of God for Jacob right now. It's putting him through inconsolable grief at the news that his son has been torn apart by a lion, that he has been devoured. I mean, what a horrible way to die. He can't even give his son a proper burial. He can't even have any closure on this. All he's given is a bloody robe, and that robe, the symbol of the father's love for his son, now soaked in blood, a constant reminder of the death of his beloved son. So, I mean, again, so much happening here that really prepares you for God's sovereign plan of that he would submit his own son to the greatest of evil and treachery, sold as a slave, torn apart. And this is no fake death of Jesus. It's a real death. You know, him stripped and torn apart by animals, so to speak, thrown into a cistern, if you will, but to rise. And that's what we see with this story too.
When you get to the whole story, finish with chapter 50, it's such a great reminder that in the deepest, darkest days of your life, you keep that spark of hope alive, that God is there and he's walking beside us.
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
incredible story.
Yeah. There's a great hymn. Encourage you to look it up, called "God Moves in a Mysterious Way." Just a great, one of the greatest hymns of all time. It's a tough song to sing. I think it might be in our hymnal. I'm not sure, but "God Moves in a Mysterious Way" by William Cooper is wonders to perform. You know, he plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. You know, he accomplishes will through evil means. And there's a line in there, oh, fearful saints, fresh courage.
Fearful saints, fresh courage, take the clouds you so much dread, are big with mercy and shall break, in blessings, yea, and in blessings, yea, and in blessings on your head, and on your head, and on your head.
Yeah. And he says, and behind a frowning providence, he hides a smiling face.
Mm.
Great word. This story, we have to remember, Joseph is loved. He is deeply loved by his father and especially by God, his father, who's given him his word. And at the same time, horribly treated and hated. But God has a good plan, and that's how he is with his own son. That's how he is with us too. We are his children. We are not discouraged by the trials and troubles, by the hatred of this world. God uses all for his glory and for our good too. So, all right. Great. Let's break it there.